What's up guys, it's me, Cosmoplaysgames, and welcome to another Humble Bundle review video. This week we're looking at the Humble Survive This bundle, a bundle which I can only think has some sort of theme with something that's been going on recently. It was a game release. Can't think what it is. Nope, not got any idea. Anyway, let's have a quick look and see what this bundle is, shall we? It's been about 2 weeks since the last bundle. So it's kind of nice to have a new bundle, but let's have a look and see what we've got, shall we? So first up, pay what you want for 3 games. First game is a game called Tharsis, where you basically play essentially a sort of board game-esque sort of turn-based strategy game, where you basically are in command of a space station or spaceship that's headed to Mars and that's been hit by disaster by a micrometeoroid storm or something daft like that. And you basically guide your crew through disasters that occur as and when on your spaceship. As you can see, that it utilizes sort of a dice system to sort of calculate chances and how things work. It basically is sort of a survival-esque game. Try and make sure that you can actually, well, choose who lives and dies. Apparently there's even cannibalism, which is a lovely, lovely thought. You know, ugh. It's $10.99 on Steam. It's got some fairly good reviews. It's 82% recently, 69% overall. Metacritic it's 61%. Not a bad little game, but it's the dice thing kind of puts me off it a bit. Maybe it's just me. Next up, we've got a game called Savage Lands. It's an early access game, so that's always a bit of a sort of a flag to put on any sort of review that you look at the game, because obviously the game can and will change. It's $10.99 on Steam. It's basically an open world multiplayer survival game where you basically wash up on a frozen shore of an island and you get to explore and uncover the history of the island as you sort of go around. It encourages multiplayer sort of cooperation and everything. It's got a crafting system and all that kind of stuff. So it's your atypical sort of open world sandbox game. It's got the reviews are it's 57% recently, 70% overall. There's some complaints about performance and difficulty of the game, but overall it's still early access, so you can sort of say that that's going to occur regardless of regardless as the game sort of develops. So maybe wait and see, but still, nonetheless, a good price for a game. Now, I'm going to pronounce this as Koolad. Hopefully that's right. Koolad is $14.99 on Steam. It's an open world atmospheric horror game. It's strangely enough narrated by Sean Bean, so obviously he dies fairly early on in the actual, fairly early on in the game, if you get that joke. There's not much more to it than that. You basically explore the environment and collect notes and try and avoid the sort of insta-kill monster that's lurking about. That's, to be honest, one of the biggest criticisms about the game is that there is no real sort of depth to it. There's sort of a general sort of, you just walk around aimlessly collecting notes, trying to figure out what's been going on and avoiding this monster. In review-wise, it's 64% recently, 75% overall on Steam, with 64% on Metacritic. So it's considered quite good in terms of atmosphere, but it might be a bit lacking in sort of direction, and you may, like many people, get rather sort of annoyed at the game. But we'll have to see. Moving on to the beat the average amount, which has another 3 games. First up, we have another early access game called Space Engineers. It's $18.99 on Steam currently, and it's basically a sort of space sandbox game where you build ships, space stations, and travel and explore space, gathering a large variety of resources, basically to survive and to sell and to trade and all that kind of stuff. Review-wise, it's extremely well received, 72% recently, 89% overall. The main criticism from most people is that it's still in development. It's been in development now for nearly 3 years, and it still has some fairly bad netcode and physics to do with multiplayer-esque game. It's because it is a multiplayer sort of game that you can cooperate with other people, but there's been reports of various bugs, sort of people falling through planets, things going wrong in terms of physics and everything. So it's got its problems, but overall it's quite well received. It's got a history. So definitely an interesting sort of game if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Rust is also quite in early access, and again is a game that you shouldn't have heard about for quite some time. It is quite famous. It's $14.99 on Steam. It's a survival horror, not survival horror, it's a survival multiplayer game with a crafting system. So again, it's more of the same sort of thing where you basically walk around, kill animals, chop trees, mine rocks, blah blah blah. And the main objective is to survive. You get to build shelter, anything else you kind of need to fashion or craft in order to actually continue survival. You have to deal with hunger, thirst, all the sort of usual sort of survival elements. It's got some, well, I was going to say some good reviews. Reviews are at the moment going downhill. Right now it's 63% recently, 81% overall. There's been a lot of bad reviews recently because a recent update has added an XP system, which has been heavily criticised by players who've been playing this game from day one. I'm basically saying that it's destroyed the game. It doesn't work. It affects it greatly. And there's also been some bad press about a certain YouTuber you being able to sort of jump into people's servers and do all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff, which has been totally denied by the developer. But that's another story as well. But apparently it was quite good before that. So whether or not that's going to be fixed or not, it's going to be a wait and see, I think, in that one. Last up in the green tier we have Shelter 2, which is a bit of an odd game. It's $10.99 on Steam, and you basically play as a powerful lynx, or I don't know, some sort of cat thing. And it's basically an open world survival game where you play as a lynx, as I said, that's pregnant, and you give birth to your cubs, and you have to nurture them and teach them the skills needed to survive in this sort of hostile world. It's fairly good reviews again, 68% recently, 87 overall. It's got 58% on Metacritic. The biggest sort of complaint about the game is that it lacks depth. It's sort of you sort of look after these cubs and you wander around and look up and do all the usual sort of things, but then that's kind of it. You kind of feel that there's no. It's quite a short game when you sort of reach a certain point. But other than that, not a bad little game, and apparently the soundtrack's quite good too. So that's pretty good. Over to the blue tier then, and $14, which is a bit more than the usual sort of $12 mark, is a game called Planet Base, which itself is actually £14.99 or £14.99. It's basically a city builder sort of game where it's set in space, where you basically build a colony on a planet by growing food, mining resources, etc, etc. So the same sort of premise again. It's got some good reviews, 74% recently, 80% overall, 70% on Metacritic. The biggest sort of criticism about it is that people feel it's incomplete. That once you get sort of past the whole sort of, oh my god, people are going to die if you don't do this right element, when you actually get to a self-sustaining sort of colony, then you end up sort of feeling, well, what do I do now? Apparently, and also there's 4 different sort of planet types, sort of a gas giant and a desert type and all that kind of stuff, and realistically speaking, they're pretty much identical. And overall, the game itself has sort of lost its sort of development sort of spark, if you want to sort of call it that. People feel that the developer has sort of finished with it and moved on, and so generally speaking, they're a bit sort of about it. But other than that, a fairly good game in review wise. And that is pretty much it. I'm trying to see if there's There's no mention of any soundtracks, so that's not necessarily a good thing. Now, overall, in my personal opinion, I'm not going to buy this bundle, as interesting as it is. I mean, I already have Rust as a result of some other bundle, I'm assuming. I can't actually remember where I got it from. But overall, I'm not a big fan of survival games. I play the odd one here and there, but in general, it's not something that I want to sort of spend lots of time on, especially sort of the open world sandbox stuff. It's kind of like, you know, my sort of viewpoint on Minecraft is that it's good for a little bit, and you sort of can drop in and out of it, but overall it's not something that I want to sort of spend too much time on, because there's no sort of real point to it. There's no sort of end game, there's no sort of mission other than survive. So overall, it's not something that I'm going to be sort of clambering to spend my money on, unfortunately. It's a nice enough bundle though. The value for money is quite good, especially with sort of the first 3 games being quite expensive. To be honest, most of the games are fairly expensive. So overall, I'm going to give the bundle a fair sort of 5 out of 10. You know, I'm not sort of going to say it's a terrible bundle, because it's not a terrible bundle. But overall, the games don't interest me, and I'm not going to buy it. So, out of fairness, it's a nice enough bundle, but it is what it is. I'm not going to buy it. I've said that already. So I'm actually going to move on now, because I'm just going round and round in circles. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, like and subscribe for more content, for more reviews like this. And I also play some games, so you can always check out those videos. Otherwise, I've been Cosmo the Coder. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you soon for another Humble Bundle review. Yes, it's a review video, not a Humble Bundle. Anyway, till next time, guys. Thanks for watching.